Hello everybody, we're going to make a textured tumbler today, and there's going to be like 3 basic steps to it. And so here's the tumbler here, and you'll see the texture on it with this cup, and then there's different textures here and even a different shape and different textures here. So lots of different opportunities to make a tumbler that you can use a lot and that you've made all by yourself. The first part of this is we're going to get our tools together. And the tools that you're going to use today can be things from the kitchen, okay? Nothing, you don't need to go out and buy fancy things. You've got everything you need in the kitchen. So you've got your clay, right? And you're going to need a clean table to work on. And it's nice to have a clean board as well too, a smaller board. You might find that helpful. And I'll just go through the tools that you're going to need as well too. The tools could all come from the kitchen, easy to find, and I'll just give you a bit of a list here to show you what you need. You're going to need like a little kitchen paring knife, just some not too sharp knife to cut the clay, little paintbrush of some kind you might have in the kitchen, but you also might have it in an old paint set or something somewhere. That'll work. Wooden spoon is a tool that would be helpful. And something you're going to need is something that's kind of sharp and pointy. So one of these wood skewers is good. Japanese chopstick is also good because they have a pointier end. And this is a smaller knitting needle. That can also work as well. So whatever you can find around the house and kitchen in particular that will have more of a pointier end is great. You're going to need a fork. It can be a metal fork or plastic. And sharp pointier ends are better as well too. A sponge, rolling pin, and plastic bags here to use as well too. I think a muffin bag will cover your tumbler really well. Small plastic grocery bag is good. And the other thing you're going to need a bit of is vinegar, okay? And couple more things here, pair of scissors and a couple pieces of paper. I've just got computer paper, printing paper here. That'll work just fine. Okay, so have fun finding your tools, and we'll see you when you get back. Hello, welcome back everybody. I've got my clay in front of me here, and it's time to make the slab for the clay tumbler. Okay, so I've got my clay here, and this is kind of fun. You get to just with a fist, just beat your clay down. Soften it up, just beat it down. Kids love this part, I gotta tell you. You want to keep working on a dry piece of the table that you've got there, or board that you've got. Keep moving it so that the clay doesn't stick. So see how as when I'm hitting it down here, how the clay is getting bigger and thinner. Okay, so I thin it down. And next, I'm going to throw the slab. And this is fun too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it down this way, like this, like that, towards me, to whatever way you want. You just keep throwing it down. I can turn it over. And see, look what's happening. It's getting wider and thinner. But you don't want to do it straight down because it makes too much of a noise. So if you make a big, you know you've gone straight down, and you want to make it go sideways, so you're stretching the clay. Stretching the clay. Now when you get it to be about half an inch thick, and maybe you've got some slits, the clay is nice and fresh, so you can just quickly fold those onto each other. You're going to take your rolling pin and you're going to roll that out, okay? Roll that out. And you might notice I got a bubble here. So if you find you've got a bubble in something, take your sharp pointy tool and just poke into it and compress that again. So you don't want air bubbles in your clay, okay? There we go. So then I've got my air bubble out. And I'm just going to roll my clay. And I'm trying to keep it like a half an inch thick. I don't know how many meters that is. You'll have to bear with me in inches. Okay, so I've got a slab kind of roughly rolled out here, and now it's time to play with some texture. We can use lots of things for texture. Here it's lots of fun to play with. So, you know, all kinds of things can be used for texture. Look at the bottom of this shoe. It's just like a whirlpool. If I press that into the clay, look at that nice texture it makes. So you've got this nice texture with the shoe. Here's a toy truck wheel that's fun, and you can just take it and roll and roll, roll, and that's going to give you this texture here on that cup. Oh, you might have a ball at home, and the ball might have some texture on it. So just have fun rolling that texture into the clay. Maybe you've got some other roll that you find with some texture, and just roll that into the clay. All right. This is a bottle brush. Seed pods, so you might have some seed pods at home. Roll that into the clay too. Look at the variety I'm getting here. It's great, eh? This is another kitchen tool, and that is what's happening on the surface here. Okay? Now you can also take things like fabric and doilies and roll that into the clay as well too, or liner of some kind, so you got that, and this kind of a fishnet, and different things as well. You know, even the rubber guards, you know, in your car work really well too. So just go around and play and find some texture. Take your rolling pin and roll that in and have a look. Do you see if you like that or not? Right? Maybe you think, oh, that's too fine. So you can just smush it out with your fingers. And I think, oh, I'm going to try this one instead. Try rolling that in and see if I like that. Alright, so I put that down here. Try and lay it flat, which seems to be a bit of a challenge for me here right now. Roll that in. See what that plastic fishnet is going to look like. Oh, that looks good. Okay. So now when I've got some texture on there, I'm going to make my slab a little bit thinner. I want to stretch my slab out more, and I just make all those textures just kind of come alive. So you can have one texture, you can have lots of textures. It's kind of fun to pick, look at this and pick one. Or you might even try a smaller space and that. And so there you go, you've got your slab ready to go. And just have a look and see what you like. And then you're going to take your slab and put it on a board and set it aside. Okay, so once you've got your slab done, you're going to set it aside, and we're going to let the clay set up and get a little bit firmer. So when we put our cup together, the clay won't be so soft, it'll be firmer, and you'll be able to handle the clay with more ease. The next step, we're going to make our pattern. So once you finish your clay and get it ready, set it aside, then come on back and we'll, with a pair of scissors, a ruler, which I forgot to show you, pencil or a pen, and the piece of paper and scissors, and we're going to make our pattern to make our cup. Hi everybody, hope you had a lot of fun getting your slab ready and playing with some texture, and now you're ready to make your pattern while your clay is getting a little firmer and setting up, as I would say. I've got a couple of options, but you can really freehand it, or you know, use kind of the measurements that I have here. You can make two. I'm gonna focus on a tumbler that goes slightly wider at the top, or a tumbler that has straight walls to it. Okay, so we're going to need to make a pattern for both of those, or you can freehand it if you want as well too, but we'll make the pattern. So the measurements for this tumbler is the height of this piece of paper is 7 inches, and then the length of it is 8.5 inches, okay? So when you make things with clay, you always want to make them bigger than where you want them to end up. Clay shrinks as it dries and goes through the kiln firings. It shrinks like 13%. So make it so it feels like it's a bit too big. And then when your cup is ready, your tumbler's ready, it's going to be the right size. So you've got your piece of paper, you've got a ruler, you've got scissors, and we're ready to go to make your pattern if you want to make a pattern for your tumbler. We're going to start with this straight-walled tumbler, which is this one, and remember we've got to make it bigger than where we want it to end up. So this tumbler I'm going to make 8.5 inches wide. I'm going to mark 8.5 and 8.5, and I want it to be 7 inches tall. So there's 7 here. I usually mark a couple of times so I don't get too crooked. That really helps, so that I can just do my lines. If you look at this my tumbler that I've shown you, and you think, oh, I'd kind of like something bigger or narrower or wider or shorter or taller, go for it. You've got this piece of paper, and you can make it the measurements and make the cup the size that their tumbler the size that you want it to be. So I'm going to cut out the piece. And what's nice when you've got a paper pattern like this is now I can take this pattern and where my ends meet, and I can get an idea with my hand about, you know, how tall it's going to be, how wide it's going to be, and if that feels okay. And I think, oh no, maybe I want it shorter, I can cut it shorter, or I want it wider. You can just Scotch tape a little more width on the outside and make it be wider. So you have all kinds of options here. With the round slightly flared at the top cup, then we're going to make a pattern that's going to be a little different. So this pattern is, for this cup, is 5.5 inches tall and 8.5 inches wide. I find about that 800, I have small hands, and that 8-inch round size for hand building cups is quite a nice diameter when you want to hold something. But if you've got a bigger hand, you might want to do a wider cup. Or a smaller hand, you might want a narrower cup. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do with my piece of paper is I'm going to fold it over. And I'm going to think, okay, I said that was 5.5 inches tall, so then I'm going to measure 5.5 inches. Maybe you want it a little taller. Maybe you're going to make it 6 inches. Let's make it 6 inches tall. And then if I want it 8.5 inches wide, well, half of that is going to, at the widest part, is going to be 4.25. So I'm just going to measure it from the top at 4.25 here, okay? And if you notice, the line with this curves, and it curves the same on the bottom, okay? So I'm going to take my line out here, this is my end point to make this. This would be straight here. And now let's just measure across the bottom here. If I fold this in half, how wide it is at the bottom for that gentle curve. It's 3.25. Okay, so here's 4.25, 4.5 to 3.25. So I'm going to go 3.25 down here. So now I can make my line here. And again, you can play around with this. This is what's so fun about this, is that you can make this more of an angle, less of an angle. You just play with it. But folding it in half works really well, because then both sides are always going to be the same for you. So I've got that down here. Now I'm going to go down. Let's see if this is straight here across here. I'm going to angle it a bit down. So let's just play, and let's just angle that down a bit. So then I want to take the bottom and I want to make it look similar. So I'm just going to angle it down here. There's ways to do this more in a really methodical, mathematical way, but we're just going to kind of wing it and play around and see what it's going to turn out like and if we like it or not. You can always do it again. That's one of the wonderful things about clay. So I folded that in half and now I'm busy cutting it here. And again, I'm just going to have a look at this. It seems so wide, but you know, there it is. There it is here, right? So again, wider, taller, shorter, more angle, less angle, that's totally up to you. Okay, so get your paper, your scissor, your pencil, and your ruler, and have some fun making your patterns, and we'll see you when you've got that done. Hello everybody, welcome back. Hope you had fun making your pattern, got your clay ready, and now you're ready to put your cup together. You've got your tools, and I've got my slab in front of me again now here, and I've laid my pattern on top of the clay textured slab, and now I'm just strictly going to cut the clay out with my knife. The other thing that can work as well too, and I recommend, I've got this on a board that I'm cutting, and remember I said about keeping the wood dry, but also you don't want to be pressing too hard. Clay is soft, you don't want to leave a knife or cut lines in your table in the future, so you can be gentle. The other tool that works here, as you can see, is this guy here, and you could even give the pin a try, the knitting needle a try as well too. So there's all kinds of things that cut clay. Set your clay aside. I'm going to just cut these aside here and take my pattern off, and now I've got my clay here, and I'm just going to put it on the table and get the other clay out of the way so I can focus on my cup. So now I'm going to look at my clay and I'm going to see how thick the wall is. You want an even wall. It's a little thinner here, so because this is a rectangle, I think I'll turn that around. And you want a nice edge, even edge here on the bottom, like I've got here, and that's about 3/8 of an inch thick, a little less maybe, and that's a good thickness for your cup, okay? On the top edge though, you see how blunt and square those edges are. I want to take my piece of paper that I had, and I'm going to lay it on top, and right at the edge, I'm just going to press in there with my piece of paper. And so now, when you look at that edge, you see how that edge isn't blunt anymore? And then I'm going to turn my slab over, and I'm going to do the same thing. And I'll just use a clear plastic bag here because that works too, but you can actually see what I'm doing more. So on this back side here, I'm going to do that as well too. Now on the one side, I want to press that side and make it, compress the clay and make it a bit of an angle. It'll help you join the two parts. And then I'm going to turn it back over again, and on that edge, same side, which is opposite now, I'm going to press that in as well too. You don't have to do that, but I just find it easier when we're going to join the two parts. So next we want to join the two parts. So what I've done is I've taken my vinegar and I poured a little bit into the lid because it's just too awkward otherwise, and you just need a little bit. A little bit goes a long way. So I've got my vinegar ready, and this is where your forks come in, or your sharp pointy tool can work too. You're going to want to be scratching the surface here where these two edges are going to join. So you want to kind of go one way and then go the other. So you can do that with the wood tool, but also see when I use the fork, how much faster that is. So I go back and forth, and I'm going to scratch that edge. Now I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to scratch this edge. So anytime when you have parts that are going to join together, you want to rough up the surface, and you're going to put, this is why you've got your brush now, I'm going to put my vinegar on that line here that I just scratched in, and I'm going to put it on both sides of that. And then you're ready to join the two parts together. And you can see my clay is still really soft, right? You might have let yours set up a little longer and it'll be a little easier to handle. And that's good too. You just don't want it to get too stiff and you can't manipulate it very well. So what's always a good idea is to gently pinch down as far as you can here. See how I'm pinching here and pinching the bottom, top and bottom, to kind of get started is a really good idea. And you're thinking, how am I going to get in there? How am I going to get this to compress in the middle? My fingers aren't that long. Well, remember the wooden spoon that you had? You just take the stick on the inside and your hand on the outside, and then you can compress those edges together like that. And I just take a little time, a little care, and get those edges to go together. So now I've got my nice rim that I'm going to want to put my lips on, and then the blunt end is the bottom. So I'm going to need to put a bottom on my cup now, so it's going to hold all those wonderful drinks you're going to have this summer to enjoy the hot weather with. So you need to get your clay back again, a piece of your clay. And I'm just going to make that a little thinner, but I like it to be the same thickness as the walls of the cup. And I like putting the texture inside, so when you're looking in the bottom of your cup or you're cleaning it, it's quite fun to see the texture in the bottom of the clay tumbler that you've got. Now, I'm laying the wall of the tumbler right on top of the slab of clay. And what I'm going to do is I can take my knife tool and I'm going to cut around the outside of that. And I can use the knife again or my wood pointy stick. And then I'm going to take this clay out of the way. You'll find the clay dries up quite quickly. Even here on these little forks on the end here too. And clay is we've all seen clay out in nature, and that is dirt, right? And when it's wet, it's fine, but when it dries, there's silica in clay and glazes and so many things, so you just always want to work with it wet and stay a bit clean, okay? So I've got my slab on the bottom here. So I've got my circle, and now in order to attach the bottom to the walls of the tumbler, I'm going to need to do the same thing I did to put the two edges of the tumbler together. So I'm going to take my fork and I'm going to go around the outside. And I like to go kind of like a crisscross because it gives it a bit of tooth to have the two parts together, scratch together. So I'm going to do the outside edge about the thickness of the wall of the cup. And then I'm going to take my cup and I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom of it. Hope you can see me doing that okay. So I'm going to scratch it. And once again, I'm going to get my vinegar on my brush and go around. Make sure you notice I don't slosh it on. I need a little bit more vinegar here. Sloshing just makes things too wet and messy. So I'm just kind of like painting it onto the surface here. And the same, I'm going to make wet this surface as well too. Alright, so then I'm going to fit this here, and you always want to make that bottom piece is going to come out to the outside edge of the wall of your cup. It never goes inside, because if it does, when the cup shrinks, then the bottom will shrink more and you'll have a hole in the bottom of your cup. So you might find it a little challenging right now, especially if you've got too much vinegar there. It might want to stick, or just because it's sitting there for a little while, it gets a bit sticky too. So I've got my bottom attached to the wall of the cup, and I can just go around and press that in by hand gently. And then I'm going to take my wooden stick, and then I'm going to tap it. So I'm going to make press the bottom edge together. You notice I'm not really walloping it. I'm just gently coaxing it to tell it to, okay, just you guys are going to stick together. It's going to be good. Okay, so there you go. Now you've got the bottom attached to your tumbler. And I'd recommend just letting it sit for a little while and letting the clay set up a little bit more. Okay, you've let the bottom set up with your cup for a little bit now, and then you're going to just finish the bottom, and then your tumbler will be finished in the making. So what you need to do now is just with your thumb, press up around the corner here, sealing that in a little bit more. And you want to have kind of just a little, you don't want it to be a blunt edge, you know, like 90 degrees. You want to have it tip up and have a little angle, a little shadow underneath there. And that'll be nice when you glaze it. You'll know where to have the glaze come to too. I like having that edge show on the outside, but you might want to fuss with it more and make that go away, but that's a personal choice of your own. That's what's so great about clay and art in general. You just follow your heart. Now this bottom is flat, and what happens when clay shrinks as it dries and you have a flat surface, the surface won't stay flat, it'll go like this. So what you have to do is bump it up, make it go in a little bit. And I just use the heel of my thumb and bump it up. Just bump it up a little bit. So now when it dries, it's going to not rock on you. It's going to be nice and level, okay? So your tumbler's done and ready to dry slowly on its own, except for one thing. You can take any of your tools, your sharp pointier tools, and what you need to do is you need to sign the bottom of it. You need to put your name in it. You need to have some symbol or something in it so that when it goes to be fired in the kiln, you can find your cup. Okay, it seems like nothing, you'd be able to find your cup no problem. Trust me, you need to put your name on it. All right, so just a signature, a stamp, something, your initials, whatever you'd like to. Maybe you'd like to draw a happy face. Whatever you want to do, you just need to sign your cup. So you just take the tool and just sign away. Don't go in too deep because you don't want to go through the bottom and make a hole. All right, so now your cup is ready to go. You need to set it aside to dry because you want all the water to get out of the clay. And once it's what is called bone dry, then it's ready to go in the first kiln firing. So you want it to dry a little slow. So what you're going to do is you're just initially going to just put a little bit of plastic over it and let it sit like this for, I don't know, depends on how hot and dry the weather is and how warm a spot it's in. You don't ever want wet clay to freeze, so set it aside in the house because it's going to be fragile. And once you see that it's starting to turn white more, then you can take the cover off of it and let it dry the water out of it completely so it's bone dry, and at that point it's very fragile. So you're going to bring it to the clay hub to be fired, and to do that you're going to have to put it in a nice little box with some padding around it so it doesn't get cracked, and treat it very gently, okay? So set it aside, out of the way, reach of everybody, and pack it up and transport it with care. So that's it for your tumbler, everybody. Thank you, and I hope you had fun making. Bye.